Hello and welcome to the circus.
Dear everyone, you fucking suck. I've had enough. I don't care. My mind's made up. Everything's fucked. Dear everyone.
Hello and welcome into the top 10 things that we got wrong for the year of 2023. Welcome in my special guest for this show. You know him well from the Wild Card Wednesday and from Hooked on Fantasy.
Burn it down!
Oh man.
Welcome back, Hutchinson Brown.
Thank you, man, for having me on. Sorry, I'm just laughing that intro with my face in it. That was like that caught me off guard. I did not know that was in there.
I pulled this
man, that was pretty
from,
good.
Wild Card from back in the day. That's one of like the lost videos that's now officially just on YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't have the audio to transfer to Spotify.
Oh my god, that's freaking hilarious.
But man, hey, welcome back to the show. Before we get into the top 10 here of the things that we got wrong, tell us where we can find your work and stuff.
So yeah, I mean, you can always follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. I mean, I'm a content creator with 4-4 Football on their YouTube channel. Make YouTube videos for them. I do some social media stuff with football guys. And I mean, I'm on Twitter, as I just mentioned. I also do Hooked on Fantasy, as you mentioned, with Luke Sawhook. He's at Luke Sawhook on Twitter. Me and him working together on that. And that's pretty much all I do, man. It's really, really fun. I mean, I also write with Dynasty League Football. I haven't written them in a while, but looking to get back this offseason for some writing. So if you like DLF, if you have a subscription to them, watch out for my articles up on their site. Yeah, but it's really fun, man. I love working in this industry. I've been here for about 3 years now. Over 3 years. It's something like that. I don't know. I think we're closing in on 3 years in February. It's gonna be fun, man. But it's been so fun. But I appreciate you letting me talk about my work. Appreciate you, man.
No, I appreciate you coming on the show, and it seems like you're staying busy, which is always a good
thing.
I'm absolutely. Like the opposite. I'm starting to wind down now. These are pre-recorded. I'll release them when I don't want to have to do an episode that week. So it'll be great. But yeah, like I said, I always like to do fantasy receipts on myself through the year. There's people out there that are always like, we don't give a fuck about your fantasy team. And yes, I get it. But at the same time, I feel like if you're going to give advice on a public platform to a certain level, you should be, I guess, held accountable. Like if you suck, like you should be called out for it.
Yeah.
And Joe is entirely for putting our hubris aside and looking back on the year and being like, oh man, these are the things that I really got wrong. And we're going to start right off with number 10.
I'm stupid. You're smart. I was wrong. You were right. You're the best. I'm the worst. You're very good looking. I'm not attractive.
All right. As long as you're willing to admit that.
So for me, I'll kick it off. Hunter Renfrow, I thought would be a much more viable receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. I thought he presented as like that Julian Edelman-like role, that Wes Welker type in the former Patriots offense, because it was the coordinator there that was at the beginning of the year, Josh McDaniels, before he got ousted for sucking so hard. So I thought Hunter Renfrow would be like a thing this year, and he was absolutely not. He was a ghost. So what would be your number 10?
So my number 10, my player that I was definitely wrong on this year, you know, it was on and off for this player, but it's clear that through the end of the season, this player is really talented. He's going to be a good fantasy football asset. And it was James Cook. I was not a fan of James Cook this season. He was someone that I was very, very off on, and I was just not in on James Cook. And I think what I can take away from this, I mean, because the thing is, James Cook, he did have success at some points. He also had a lot of bad parts of the season, and those are the things I highlighted, which is where he can't take that full course role. He can't take that role, and he's not going to be it's not going to be enough for him to do great for fantasy. In those games, I was able to point that out. But Since new OFC has come in, Joe Brady, he has become a whole different monster for fantasy football. They're getting the ball in very specific ways that help him succeed. A lot of runs to the outside, not many up the middle, and many opportunities in the receiving game. And that's where he lies. So I think what I can learn from this moving forward is that I need to trust the talent of players to come through a little bit more. I would, because I did believe James Cook was a talented player, and it was written all over his rookie year. Looking at his yards after contact numbers, looking at his efficiency numbers, it was clear that he's a super talented player. It's just how you get him the ball that matters because of his size. And I didn't think the Bills were going to be able to do that, and I didn't think they would do that. But I should have trusted the talent of James Cook to be able to show the Bills, this is how you need to get me the ball. And I wasn't able to see that. So that was where I was wrong. I think again, like I said, what I need to learn is to trust the talent players.
Yes, but at the same time, I think you were on the right track initially because it was really the offensive coordinator change that made the big difference. And I always say
it
that
made a huge difference.
even the talent level, coaching matters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because like you said in the beginning of the season, it was very on and off. They weren't really using him the way that he should be used. But with a new OC, they've got him. They've got him good.
So I had kind of a different one for the next one, but since we were talking about James Cook, I'm going to pivot to a similar type player for number 9.
Not the kind of person to say a toe-to-so, but you know what? A toe-to-so. A fucking a toe-to-so.
Jahmyr Gibbs, ultra talented running back for the Detroit Lions. There were plenty of fantasy analysts that were very hyped about him. I was not amongst them. I was the opposite. I tend to have a little more hesitancy just in general with any rookies coming in. I think the one I was right about was Bijan Robinson because all I said was all he has to do is not break rookie records and he will be a disappointment if you draft him in the first round. And that's basically what happened. With Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously his draft capital was a little bit less, but I still thought it was pretty high. And like James Cook, for the first, 6 weeks of the season, especially, they were using him like DeAndre Swift. Very much to me was like, what was the point then of, getting rid of your 2 running backs that were doing a great job already and bringing in 2 of the same running backs, especially when David Montgomery costs more money. So I just was confused about the moves. I wasn't buying into it, but round weeks 6 to 8, his talent started to overshadow the coaching and how they were using him, and they finally gave him a more prominent role in the offense. And I think especially as a secondary receiver, because I think even above Laporta coming out of the backfield, Goff likes Gibbs as the second read after Amon-Ra, and then he's looking to Laporta in that mid-range tier on the plays that they're calling for him. So I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, he's been great for the last several weeks and kind of carried you to a fantasy championship. So that was when I had to eat crow early on. But I reversed course like so early in the season. I made trades to get Gibbs. So I didn't feel that bad about that one.
Yeah, so Jahmyr Gibbs was like, I was one of the Jahmyr Gibbs people of Twitter that you were mentioning earlier. Like I hyped him up to no end. I mean, I was constantly tweeting about Jahmyr Gibbs and how he's going to break out this season. He was like my guy this year. He was my player I'm all in on. And it did take a while, but we eventually got there. And I did start to get a little bit worried about halfway through the season when it really started to didn't pick up. I was like, man, he's a first rounder, a top 12 pick at running back, and he's not producing yet. It's a little weird, but I still had faith. I never gave up. I never traded him away in any of my dynasty or redraft leagues, and that ended up panning out for me. I did try to buy him low a couple times, but it didn't end up working out. But I had Jahmyr Gibbs on plenty of teams already. So if I bought him low in a couple leagues, I would have had him on every single one of my fantasy football teams already. It would have been crazy. But yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs was my guy. I consistently tweeted that he was going to be an RB1 this year, and he's currently a top 6 running back in points per game. So it took a while, but we got there, and he has a really bright future.
All right. Before we move on to the next one, what was your number 9?
So my number 9 was I was just, oh my goodness, this is one that I'm really frustrated with. I was really, really wrong on Cam Akers. Man, I wanted Cam Akers to break out. I think the thing I did with this was I really loved Cam Akers in college, man. I loved his film. I thought he was a fantastic running back. And the flashes he showed in his rookie years towards the end of the season, especially in the NFL playoffs, especially that game against the Green Bay Packers, He had a massive performance, and I was just like, this is a dude. This is the dude. This is the guy. He's going to have a humongous career for the Rams. I'm expecting a big time career, especially with Sean McVay after what they had just done with Todd Gurley not too long ago. I was expecting a big career for Cam Akers. He had shown flashes of receiver. He was great as a runner. And then the Achilles injury happened before his second season. It was right around my birthday, which was really sad. I legit cried when I saw that injury. I was so sad. Like, I loved Cam Akers, man. I was very sad to see that injury. But moving forward to this year, I was out last year. Like, last year I was out. This year I was back in, second year off the Achilles. I really thought I was going to do something. I think I just talked myself into it. I really did. I think I just got way too stubborn with Cam Akers and was like, this is the guy that's going to break out. I said it before. I said it again. It's going to happen. I'm convincing myself it's going to happen. And I think as a result, I just fell into the trap of volume on a bad offense with a bad offensive line and questionable talented running back in Cam Akers. And yeah, he just flopped. So that one was a big failure for me.
But I'm not necessarily remembering the beginning of the season, but before he was traded to the Vikings,
he did nothing.
He was
doing he had the volume. He had 22 carries, but he got like 29 yards in his first game and 22 carries. He did nothing with it. I mean, he had the opportunity. He really did. I was right on that the opportunity was there for him. Like, he was the first guy to get the ball.
Well, and then we've seen the emergence now of Kyren Williams. So
and then Kyren Williams.
Sometimes you just miss on the guy that it turns out to be. But I think most people were there with you at the beginning of the year. I had both of them in my dynasty roster, Cam Akers and Kyren Williams.
Yep.
So I kind of lucked out that way, where I had previously acquired Cam Akers through a trade, and then I liked Kyren Williams, the cut of his jib coming out of college. He was considered a character guy, and so I drafted him just because of that. And then it kind of worked out. I had the two running backs on the team, and then obviously Akers got shipped out, and he suffered like a really unfortunate injury then with the Vikings, did he not?
With the Vikings? Yeah, he had another injury. He had another Achilles tear.
Season ender, if I remember, because there's been so fucking many this year that I literally cannot keep track anymore.
It's been unbelievable. The injuries this year, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, there have been nearly 60 starting quarterbacks this year already. It's just insane. But yeah, Akers, I think he suffered another Achilles earlier this year.
Yeah, that's rough.
Which is it's a career ender. Like, I mean,
yeah, I mean, well, because it's his second one now, right?
Yeah, he was already on his way out, but yeah, this one is no.
So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if you're a dynasty owner for Cam Akers, you can toss him out just the way that we're going to be tossing out number 8. Let's go with guest choice this time. You started us off on lucky number 8 because it's my lucky number.
All right, let's go. So the next one, I'm gonna. This one's a bit of a twofer, but I was really wrong about Alvin Kamara and Kendra Miller, the backfield of the New Orleans Saints. I was dead wrong on it this year. I mean, I was a big Kendra Miller fan when he was coming out of TCU. He was one of my favorite prospects. I really liked this kid. Watching his film, looking at the numbers, everything lined up for him to me to be a day 2 pick and be a really good running back. Everyone was telling me, you're crazy. He's not going on day 2. He was injured during the combine. There's just no chance. But the Saints took a shot on him in the 3rd round. And I was like, this is a huge opportunity. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is going to come back after 6 games. But I was advocating for the fact that Kendra Miller by the end of the season will be the lead back for the New Orleans Saints. Like, that was my take. And because watching Kamara last year, I was like, this guy's washed. Like, he is done. He has not looked good to me. I was just done. But Kamara this year really showed me up. After he came back from his suspension, he's been a monster for fantasy football. Not just good, not just okay. He's been a monster, and he's looked fantastic. Not as a runner. He's looked terrible as a runner like he did last year. But as a receiver, when you get him in open space, when you give him some steam, he just breaks tackles, man. He's one of the best tackle breakers in the entire National Football League. His contact balance is just on a different level. It has always been throughout his career. But I thought that was gone this year. I really thought that he was going to fall off the cliff and that Kendra Miller was going to slowly but surely take over this backfield. That's not how it worked out this year. Maybe Miller gets an opportunity next year. They have potential outs with Kamara's contract in the next 2 years, so maybe they could get out of him. But yeah, this year it was definitely a bust. I'm still holding out hope for Kendra Miller. I'm not selling him in Dynasty because no one's buying him for anything. If you have Kendra Miller in Dynasty, I would not sell him. If you don't have Kendra Miller in Dynasty, I think a 3rd round pick is not a bad shot to take at him. But yeah, I was wrong on this backfield this year.
So I was also kind of wrong on this backfield. I just had to flip my number 6 and my number 8 because for me it was Jamal Williams. It was the other running
Oh,
back.
I was like, no, I was not in on Jamal.
I was still convinced that because Jamal
No.
Williams is a character running back. He is not a talent,
yeah.
like not a talented running back in the sense of if you're going to compare him to the Alvin Kamara's and Jahmyr Gibbs and those kind of running backs. He is a plotter. He is a end zone guy. He's a character locker room guy. That's why he landed and hit so well with the Lions. And I thought that would translate better to the New Orleans Saints locker room because of just the way that team and city really revolve around each other, the way that the Saints fans really buy into the team. I thought Jamal Williams would be more of a fixture on this offense, kind of the way that we saw previously with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. I thought he would serve that same role, and we would see it with initially Kendre Miller, but then Alvin Kamara when he came back. I never thought Kamara was washed or was going to lose it. I had Kamara everywhere I could possibly get him, especially when I found out it was only going to be 3 games. I was like, oh, let me get Kamara in every possible conceivable area. So I had him everywhere. But I also was grabbing Jamal Williams because in my mind, I was like, I think Jamal Williams is going to be really viable those first 3 weeks and then still have, again, that same kind of role he had with Detroit. I saw it playing out similarly. He has been wholly and completely irrelevant to this team. Taysom Hill's been a better running back this year. So
Yeah.
There for Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I mean, given my Kendre Miller fandom, I never thought Jamal Williams could be anything relevant to this offense. I think the only reason he was really relevant last year was because, again, like you said, he's a character guy. Dan Campbell loves those kind of players, and then he scored a ton of touchdowns. Otherwise, I just don't think he was going to be relevant, and that was kind of real. That was true.
Yeah, it turned out to be a bad joke on me, just like number 7.
I thought my jokes were bad.
All right. For me, number 7, and this is going to be a trend for the next 2, actually, teams that I thought would just not be as good as they ended up being the Cardinals. And they still sucked. And especially when we saw Clayton Tune for that game, that was hysterical. That was really kind of what I was expecting from the Cardinals. But otherwise, they were a much more competitive team through the beginning of the season. Even though they were losing games, they weren't getting blown out. They didn't look like complete jokes, which is what I basically expected. I thought they literally had the potential to be a winless team. And I thought that given if they were to lose every single game before Kyler had come back, he may not have. I really thought in my mind that if they tanked the season that badly, that Kyler would ultimately not come back and that they would potentially move on.
I thought there was a realistic chance he wouldn't come back.
I was very much in that boat, and it hasn't been that way. He has come back, and I do think that they're going to ride this out with Gannon and Kyler Murray through now to next season, and kind of we'll see, once they have the complete fixture of their offense. We saw the breakout of Trey McBride. We'll see if they bring back James Conner, maybe out in the backfield. We'll see what they can get for the wide receiver room. But ultimately, if they can get a full offense going, I think they played better, even with a bad record and being probably the worst team in football. They played better than I was expecting. So that was my number 7. What was yours?
My number 7 this year was I was really hopeful for the Ravens offense this year. Not that they have been bad. It's just I was really expecting a huge passing season from Lamar Jackson. And, there have been 4 games this year where he hasn't thrown a passing touchdown there. The passing touchdowns and passing yardage, he's 15th in the league in passing yardage. It just wasn't there this year. The passing numbers were not like I thought the passing numbers were not there like I thought they would be. I was really having a lot of hope for Mark Andrews, who did well for fantasy when he was on the field. I had a lot of hope for Zay Flowers, who did well for fantasy when he was on the field. But I really thought Lamar was going to take a step this year. It was like, Oh yeah, he is like he might be a top 3 quarterback in this league. Like he is there. I really thought that step was going to be taken this year, and I was like all in on Lamar Jackson for this season. He was one of my favorite players to draft in fantasy. I love stacking with Mark Andrews. Coming in the 3rd round and the 4th round with those 2 guys. That was a great draft in my opinion. I did it in my home league. I got Mark Andrews and Lamar in the 3rd and 4th. But Lamar did good this year. He has a solid year for fantasy football. He's a top 8-ish fantasy quarterback, but it really, really disappointed me seeing the passing attempts not go up to the point where I wanted them to be. I really thought he was going to be like nearing 4,000 yards this year, like maybe 25 touchdowns. Like I was really hoping for those kind of numbers, but it's just not really there this year. It just wasn't there.
No, that hits home with me for 2 reasons. One is I've been debating on Twitter today that because suddenly now Lamar is the MVP favorite, which is this whole MVP discussion to me is absolutely ridiculous this year. It should not go to any quarterback, in my opinion, or just rename the
100%. I'm with you, man. I don't get the MVP discussions right now. It just keeps shifting through quarterbacks where I'm like, these guys are not the MVPs of their teams. Like these guys are not, or they could be MVPs of their team. Not the league.
Either one, I'm fine, but it's those 2 guys, in my opinion. And we saw the Dolphins with week.
McCaffrey and Hill, right?
Yeah, CMC and Hill. Like you saw
those
the Dolphins.
Are the 2 MVPs. I don't get it. I'm in complete agreement with you. I don't understand any other discussion besides those 2 guys. I really don't. Those 2 are the clear-cut frontrunners for MVP this year. If those 2 guys were not on their teams would be so much worse without them. I'm not saying Lamar is not valuable to his team. I'm not saying, Josh Allen isn't valuable to his team. I'm not saying, Dak Prescott is not valuable to his team. But these guys are not MVPs. Those 2 guys changed their teams in such a different way this year, even with McCaffrey at the running back position. I mean, you talk about for fantasy how he's been an advantage this year in the NFL too. No, like we think for fantasy how running backs keep getting injured and we can't find great running backs. Think about McCaffrey in the real life NFL. He is the guy. He is it in the NFL right now. He's the clear-cut best running back in the league. No other team has a running back like him. He's just a difference maker. He really, really is, even at a position where we don't think it's advantageous to have a difference maker. Chris McCaffrey has just shown all of that wrong this year because he's just so talented and he's just so good. Those 2 guys should be the clear-cut runners for MVP. If you want to choose McCaffrey, that's fine. I think it's Hill personally. If you want to choose McCaffrey, I totally understand. Like those 2 guys should be the front runners, though. I completely agree with you, Jack. Like I don't understand.
I think it's McCaffrey because of what he does in 2 aspects of the game.
That's fair. It's totally fair.
He's got 100% fair touchdowns. But Reek literally changes the entire offense. Like the way the Cowboys defense even tried to play them. The Cowboys were like, we've been playing man all year. We're not doing that shit against the Dolphins, though.
No, of course not. You can't do that. I mean, you can't
have a defensive coordinator like Dan Quinn changing his offense or his defense overnight just for 1 player. Yeah, that guy's the MV fucking P.
Yeah, man, you can't. Like he's literally unguardable. Like you can't follow him. You can't. He's just too quick on his feet. He has the lateral speed. He'll just burn you. And he's also really freaking strong. If you press him and if you get a hand on him wrong, he's gonna knock. He's like he'll push you away and he'll just burn by you. I mean, it's just you can't guard him.
Yeah, the other aspect of it too, just going back to what you were saying about Lamar for a fantasy aspect, I was in with you on the Lamar Andrews stack because I love quarterback tight end stack. That's kind of my thing. And I was living in the Mahomes-Kelsey district for so long, but it got gentrified and they pushed that ADP up way too high for me. I was like, oh, this is a rich neighborhood now. I got to move on out of here. And I moved on down to Lamar and Mark Andrews Boulevard. I thought it was a really nice place. It's been okay, but it definitely wasn't as good as those yesteryears of when I had Mahomes and Kelsey stacked. Mark Andrews obviously with the injury. And yeah, Lamar, even compared to his MVP season, he had 36 and 6 that year. He's got 19 and 7 this year. I'm so sick of the debate with the fucking quarterbacks, like we said. But
yeah,
spend the whole episode on just that. So we'll move on here to number 6.
And bring your brooms because it's a mess.
So I was just talking about the Cardinals. The Bucs are the other one for me. I was wrong about the Bucs. I thought they were going to suck, and they
I think most people did.
Mayfield was awesome. I always expected Mike Evans to still have 1,000 yards because he can do it with me at quarterback. So I was drafting him everywhere, but I was not in on Rachaad White. I was super wrong about that. He's like a top 5 fantasy running back.
I was pretty in on Rachaad White. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I was up in. And Chris Godwin, who has come on stronger as of late, was not in on him because I was like, the PPR volume guy, if Baker does end up sucking, is not going to be the one I want for fantasy. And so I was out on this offense, and I thought they would end up being potentially last in the division. And they are probably going to win this division. So it's very wrong about the Bucks. What would be your number 6?
My number 6 was I was quite wrong. I think most people were wrong about this one, but it was very limited games. We didn't see much of him this year, but Anthony Richardson was good. I don't know what anyone, I don't care what anyone else says. When I watched him play and I talked to a lot of other people about this and they agree with me, he looked impressive. Like he really did. And not just as a runner, but as a passer. I mean, this dude was going through reads pretty well. He was making some accurate throws. Obviously, there were some throws where you're like, what the heck are you doing? But there were some throws where it's like, oh yeah, this kid's good. He was legit a bad passer in college, and Stain Schnieken put it together for him and made him look like a really good quarterback. Now, is it Anthony Richardson or is it Stain Schnieken? I don't know. That's yet to be determined in future years. But I legit was throwing it out there that I think Anthony Richardson might have one of the worst rookie quarterback seasons of all time. Like I legit thought this Colts team was going to be a disastrous team, and I thought Anthony Richardson was going to have a terrible season. I was not expecting anything from this receiving core. I was very worried about Jonathan Taylor, but Michael Pittman showed up, and that was another one that I had listed. Michael Pittman, I was out on him, but he turned out doing really well for fantasy football. But specifically for this one, I want to talk about Anthony Richardson because I was really just like, no way he has a good rookie season. I'm fine with him in fantasy, but not really like all in. But yeah, I was really expecting a bad season from Anthony Richardson. I don't know what I want to learn from this. I mean, because I'm trying to think of things I could learn because I feel like my process was right because he was seriously a terrible passer in college. When you have a terrible passer in college, you see it's all terrible and you go to the NFL with a questionable receiving core. Like, why would you expect a great rookie season? Why would you expect an impressive rookie season as a passer, right? When you're stepping into the NFL, maybe I should have trusted Stain Schnieken more, but I don't know. I would take that bet again, to be honest. I was wrong to take that bet again.
Actually think the lesson to learn there was Shane Steichen. When you look at what
he's legit, man.
The
Eagles miss him.
Because I always
as an Eagles fan, the Eagles miss him.
Coaching, we said it earlier in the show, and we're already back to it again. Coaching to me is the most important aspect of a player's success because yes, a very small percentage of players, their raw talent will overcome bad coaching. That is a 0.1% among elite athletes that are already in a category of 0.1% of humans. So you are talking about like 3 people in the entire fucking world that can do that. The rest of them need good coaching to set them up properly to succeed.
Yeah.
Shane Steichen, I think obviously what he had done with Jalen Hurts already in the past, the raw talent of the running ability. I was very much in on Anthony Richardson from a fantasy perspective. I was drafting either him or CJ Stroud if I was going to take a rookie quarterback. The one I was out on was actually Bryce Young because I was like, he's kind of the hybrid that's too small with worse weapons and a harder conference, in my opinion, like with a worse schedule. Like, everything to me said don't take him. If you're going to take a rookie, either take A-Rich because of the running or take Stroud because he's the best pure passer here. But I was in on A-Rich, and I always, for me, it was because of Shane Steichen. Like, if Shane Steichen had not been there, I'd have been like, well, yeah, no matter how good he is at running, if he can't pass the ball, like he's going to end up getting benched for Gardner Minshew or whoever the backup ends up being. So I think, you were on track there, but again, the coaching to me is so integral. And especially when you look at, they've already built up a similar type player recently. Like what would he do with Jalen Hurts? Like you lean on that expertise more than what you think even about the player.
Yeah, that had me worried looking at what he did with Jalen Hurts, but I was also under the impression, like, I really thought Jalen Hurts actually took a step forward. I wasn't thinking it was all coaching, and I was just like, Hurts wasn't the best passer, but like Richardson, like Like, I don't remember a quarterback that had been drafted so highly that had such a bad passing profile. Like, his passing profile, like, when you look at the numbers and you watch him throw the ball, it's just like, how? How is he making it in the top 5? When he got picked top 5, I was kinda shocked. I mean, I thought I was thinking it could happen, but I was kinda shocked that the NFL actually did it and took the shot on him. But, yeah, he looked impressive. I'm really hoping the shoulder injury doesn't derail his career. I'm really hoping he comes back next year with a fire.
That's the Josh Allen effect that now they think
Yeah.
every super athletic quarterback that's really inaccurate can like become the franchise quarterback that they envision that can do both. The problem with A-Rich is, man, this guy needs to learn how to fucking slide because he
Dude, like, oh my
so
gosh, another thing with him, he took so many hits, dude. He needs like, Stanisiak did a lot of great things for Richardson, but you need to teach him how to do that, man. Like, he was not afraid of taking hits, and that's a problem.
the amount of hits he took is a perfect segue right into number 5. So who is your number 5?
My number 5, a player I was really wrong on this year. I doubted a lot, but this player, when he was healthy, came out and dominated on a different level. I'm talking about Devon Achane. I wasn't really in on him as a player for fantasy football purposes. I thought he was a really explosive player, and I thought he'd be great for an NFL team, but I didn't think he'd have a role for fantasy that was relevant. I really thought that he might be subjected to special teams, to like a very, very like Swiss Army knife kind of player in an offense. I didn't think he'd be taking a large workload at his size, 5'9", 188 pounds. I just didn't think it was there. But when he was on the field for fantasy, this dude was the best running back in fantasy football. I mean, he was a fantastic asset to have. Since he's gotten back from injury, it has slowed down, to be quite fair. I mean, in the first 3 weeks that he played, I mean, he was just on a different level. But lately, since he's gotten back, it actually has slowed down a bit. So I would be a little bit worried about Achane looking towards next season if this slow production continues. But I was definitely wrong. He's going to have a very relevant role in this offense. I was thinking that he's going to be subjected to special teams, and he's definitely not. He's going to have a role in the offense.
Yeah, I was the opposite on him. He was actually my most drafted rookie running back.
I was not in.
It was a discount compared to a lot of the other running backs. And in my mind, he had Tyreek Hill speed from the running back position. And the fact that both of them would be on the field at the same time, I'm like, so if Tyreek goes down the field and you have to cover him, and then Achane comes out of the backfield, like, what do you do? Like, they're both.
And then you have Waddle too. Remember that.
And yeah, like when they were both involved, both fully healthy, like that offense, that's when that offense is really scary, is actually a fully healthy Reek and Achane. For me, it was the golden goose himself, Trevor Lawrence. I thought Trevor Lawrence was good at football. What the hell happened to Trevor Lawrence this year? The Jaguars just have been like beleaguered somehow, like through this whole season. They leaned a lot on Travis Etienne early, and he's slowed down as of late. They're at risk of now losing this division when it seemed like they had an absolute stranglehold on it. And I think Trevor Lawrence is like probably the most responsible because he has not played well.
Yeah, he just hasn't taken that step that we wanted him to after year 2, because year 1 was obviously disastrous. We know that Urban Meyer made this team a disaster. But looking towards year 2 and 3, year 2, he took a solid step forward. He's a QB1 in fantasy football, and he looked good, showed a lot of flashes. This year, we were expecting a massive jump. I mean, some people had him, all over the place. People were really expecting big things, but he has not taken that step. He kind of just has stayed the same a little bit. He hasn't taken a huge step. I mean, let's look at his stats, because I mean, from what I remember, I don't think statistically he's taken a huge jump. Let's see here.
No, and I had him like just outside that kind of top 8 range of quarterbacks where, right after the runners like Lamar and Fields, that's right around where I was looking at T-Law in the Dak range. And the fact that Dak Prescott's been so much better for fantasy, Trevor Lawrence has been a big disappointment, I think.
Yeah, looking at his yards, his touchdowns, interceptions, looking at his completion percentage, he's on pace to have very similar numbers across the board, except more interceptions. Like, it's just like he kind of didn't really take a step forward. And to be fair, I mean, they brought in Calvin Ridley. he didn't really show up like we wanted him to be fair to him. But it really just like Trevor Lawrence didn't take that step that we wanted him to.
I mean, Calvin Ridley was one that I was wrong about for a half of football.
Yeah, I can't tell if I was right or wrong because I was dead out. I was like, don't you dare draft Calvin Ridley. I'm just like not interested. He was good for some games. I feel like mostly he was bad. I feel like at ADP he was.
I was so out. People were taking him in like the top 5. Like he was going as high as the 5th round. I saw him creep up even to like the 3rd.
Oh yeah, he was going among the top 16 fantasy wide receivers. He was right there. Yeah, he was highly drafted.
It was crazy. And I was like, look, this man hasn't played in several years. I get it. And then it was very much like they took ultimate victory laps after a half of football. And it's been wildly inconsistent, to say the least. Like, you talk about not being able to know if you can play Gabe Davis or not. You didn't draft Gabe Davis as top 16 wide receiver. And Calvin Ridley has been just as histrionic in terms of his good and bad games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like especially like the last handful of weeks, like the last 4 or 5 weeks, and you look at the volume numbers, it's there, 9+ targets in each of his last 5 games. But then you look at the fantasy production, you look at the catches, you look at the numbers, it's just the fantasy points aren't there. Last week it was great against Tampa Bay, but this week against Carolina, who's a much tougher secondary. I've told people, I made a video for 4-4 lately where he was a big bench for me. I mean, I know the upside's there for championship week. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Like, I don't think he's worth the risk. I'm willing to take risks in the playoffs when it comes to start sit decisions. If you're taking a risky player, I don't mind it. I don't think Calvin Ridley is worth that risk. I really don't.
Well, I mean, some people, if they do take that risk, they might need some fantasy therapy going into next week. And that'll lead us right into number 3.
Just hit the pillow. See how you feel.
There's your fucking pillow.
Feel better?
Yeah, I do.
Also, I'm an idiot. It's number 4. I fucked it up. Hey, it is what it is. Number 4, actually, Mac Hollins and Drake London. I don't like soft things, said Mac Hollins. And when he had that whole little rant, I'm not going to lie. I started drafting him like, now, that one didn't hurt because it was the last round of the.
Yeah, Mac Hollins. Yeah, he was irrelevant.
As soon as it didn't work out after like week 1, I was like, bye. But Drake London, I was out on Kyle Pitts. I was out on Bijan Robinson, but I was in on Drake London. And the reason is because as much as we all want to hate Arthur Smith, the ultimate fantasy villain, he has had that like big body wide receiver be an integral part of his offense in the past. We saw it with AJ Brown in his younger days. I thought Drake London could be very much like an AJ Brown light. Like if you ordered AJ Brown from Wish, you would get Drake London.
You get Drake London, yeah. I like that.
I really was like counting on like 1,000 yards, maybe 7-8 touchdowns, a little bit of like a borderline breakout season, maybe a little potential to push those numbers up a little bit. But holy fuck, was I wrong? Arthur Smith just really hates fantasy football.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it's funny. I think if I'm not mistaken, they went to the same college, Michael Pittman and Drake London. Because I mean, those two remind me of each other a lot, to be honest. Like they're both USC, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they both went USC. I'm not a huge college guy, so I'm not always, locked in with that stuff. But I believe they both went to USC. I'm not mistaken. They remind me of each other a lot. I mean, both big frame, both can make those contested catches, and both are just really good athletes. And ironically, both have questionable quarterback situations too. But looking at Drake London this year, it was quite interesting. I was out personally. I was just like, no, this offense is not going to be worth it. They drafted Bijan Robinson. They have Tyler Algier. This team is, and they have the best offensive line in the league, arguably. They're going to run the football until it's illegal or something. I mean, they're going to run the football every chance they get to. And with Kyle Pitts already in the offense, with Bijan out of the backfield, this team is just not going to get enough targets to Drake London, and that's how it's been. The targets just have not been there consistently enough for him. And I'm lucky I have not drafted him at all. I did not draft him in a single redraft league this year.
Yeah, no, me, it was because of what you just said, like they run 2 tight end set and they run.
Yeah, they do that a lot too.
Yeah. But I was like, the one passing option usually is that wide receiver 1. usually sees like 7 to 12 targets a game in an Arthur Smith offense. And even that wasn't like they're all consistently. And yes, it was partly the quarterback play, but also Arthur Smith just been fucking around this year.
Yeah,
With
dude,
that, though,
he really
what was
has.
your, number 4 before we move on here?
Oh, my number 4. Sorry, yeah. My number 4 this year was I was really oh man, I was in on Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup was one of my favorites this year. I didn't mention that one, right? Sorry, I've mixed up my list a little bit. I didn't mention
Yeah,
that one,
that's
right?
my bad.
What's that?
That's probably my bad, but no, you have not mentioned Michael Gallup.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I know it's my fault. I mixed up my list. I went down up and down a little bit my list. But Michael Gallup was somebody that was very in on this year as a sleeper. He was one of my favorites. I was really hoping he would take the number 2 step because after, a couple of years ago, he had a 1,000+ yard season. Like this dude was a legit wide receiver, and then he had an ACL tear, and the year after the ACL it just didn't work out. I was hoping second year off the ACL things would come back for him. I was really hoping now with Zeke gone, this offense would become more pass heavy. And while they have passed the ball a decent amount, it's gone to other guys. I mean, Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson have really stepped up, and it's left Michael Gallup in a position where he's just not relevant to this offense. He's not necessary to this offense in any way. They've taken a couple deep shots to him. That's pretty much it. He's just not relevant. And I was really hoping for something bigger, but it was a very late draft pick, so I'm not too burnt by it, but I was really hoping for more from him.
Yeah, no, I feel that on the late draft pick. It's similar to like I mentioned earlier with Hunter Renfrow and like with Mac Hollins. It's like, yeah, it was wrong, but it's like those aren't the ones that really hurt us. But now we'll get to the real number 3 and the ones that did hurt us.
Sheila, come in so much on the ground.
So you can start us off this time. What was your number 3?
So my number 3, and since I've gone out of order, it's been like a little weird. These aren't like the top 3 that hurt me the most. There have been other ones, but my number 3 here, the 3 that I have left, the first one's going to be Dameon Pierce. I was in on Dameon Pierce. I liked him this season. I just don't get what happened. Like, I really don't understand. Last year, this dude ran like one of the most aggressive, most physical running backs that we've seen in quite a bit. Like, I mean, this dude was unbelievable. Like, he was really good with the football in his hands. He showed flashes as a receiver. He looked to be a full-time back. He's 5'10", 218 pounds. I don't get why this guy couldn't be a 3-down back. And then you come into this season and you have Devin Singletary in the offense, and obviously that raised a couple of concerns. But I was still on Dameon Pierce. I thought Devin Singletary was going to take more of a backup role, and Dameon Pierce was going to have the role because I really like. Because usually the thing is like I try to stay away from the trap running backs. I've learned this year to stay away from the trap running backs. I've tried to do it. I mean, I went in on Rachaad White, Dameon Pierce, and Cam Akers, who everybody labeled as trap running backs, but I went in on those 3. Rachaad White worked out, Cam Akers did not, and Dameon Pierce did not work out either. But the thing I had with Dameon Pierce is that I really believed in the talent. His talent was there. He was aggressive, so physical of a running back. I really thought his talent was going to shine through, and especially with how the offense of the Texans stepped up this year, with how Nico Collins played, with how Tank Dell played, with how CJ Stroud played. If you were to tell, like if I were to tell you, if you hadn't seen this season, if I were to tell you CJ Stroud were to have a historic season, Nico Collins, Tank Dell would do well, you'd probably expect Dameon Pierce to have a good season, right? To play along with that. It just didn't happen though. Like he really just sucked. Like he looked terrible. And I was just like I was like watching him the first few weeks of the season. I was just so shocked. I was like, he looks terrible. He looks nothing like he did in his first season. And it's so disappointing. I just like I would take that shot again because I believe in the talent. When I believe in the talent, I'm going to take the shot. But it was really frustrating watching Dameon Pierce this year.
I have a shit-eating grin on my face, and it's not because I think Dameon Pierce is bad. It's because the man just took a 96-yard kickoff return for a touchdown the other week. So it's like obviously he is gifted.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, what the fuck? And it was such a slap in the face because
man. I just don't get it.
I'm like only got 6 points because it was like the way the league set up just doesn't score.
Yeah, I don't understand why he's on kick return team now. He returned 5 kicks this past week. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, it was weird. I was like, what the
weird, man.
But I agree with you that I didn't end up drafting him a lot, but that was one that I thought just was like, seriously, like, what are you guys doing? My number 3. I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys offense, sort of, because I thought that Dak would also be really bad. I was
Mm.
not a believer in the Michael McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer brain trust going into the season, especially when they said some ridiculous shit like, well, last year we were scoring too often and that was ruining our season. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I
Yeah.
have to admit, McCarthy's offense has been good for everyone except Tony Pollard, who I did have him on my bus list, and that's why I say sort of, because I was right about Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I did too. I was not in on Pollard at
It's
all.
because of the run scheme. That's a Schottenheimer thing of they went from outside zone to inside zone, and Pollard is extremely good and successful at outside zone, which is running those C gaps and getting in space. But if you make him run up the center's ass 12 times a game, like, no, that's not going to be efficient or good for him. And so that's why I had him as a bust. And we've seen in games that if he doesn't hit the 20 carry mark basically and get it through gross volume and a touchdown, he's been bad for fantasy football. So that's why I kind of am like Cowboys sort of, because Dak has been a lot better than I expected. CeeDee Lamb I still had on my draft board. I didn't take him as often as I should have, so I would still eat a little bit of crow on that, but I definitely was still on like, you have to draft CeeDee Lamb because even McCarthy,
I was very in on CD as well, man. The CD was my
even
guy.
he showed in the past with Devontae Adams that he would like his offense will focus on a sole wide receiver as like a superstar. So I was still in on Lamb from a volume perspective, but even he's surpassed my expectations. So just in general, I would still say I was wrong about the Cowboys, but I don't think that it was the one that hurt me the most. The next two are definitely the ones that really hurt my fucking soul. But before we get there, I'll let you go first with the guy that you can pull, whether it's someone that hurt you or just someone that you embraced and thought they were going to be good, and they basically told you to go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
Oh my goodness.
Number two.
These transitions are awesome. So number two. So here's the thing with this one. This player I was just out on. I did not believe in very much. I didn't think the opportunity was going to be there for him. And it was. It was there for like a good chunk of the season. But since then, it's actually faded. And we now have the Travis Etienne that I expected for the rest of the season. I'm talking about Travis Etienne, man. I was really not in. He was drafted as a top 12 running back in fantasy football this past year. And I was just like, I just don't see it, guys. I just don't see it. They've added a third round running back and Tank Bigsby. All they've said is that they're going to involve their backs. They still have Dearness Johnson, a guy who was really good in Cleveland when he got the opportunity. I just don't see him getting, the 80% snaps, like 75% plus snaps that he was getting last season. And of course, in the first half of the season, that's what he was doing. I mean, looking at his first half stats, he had 80+% snaps in every single game before the week 9 bye, but 2. And in both those 2 games where he missed 80%, he had 70+%. This dude was getting the full course workhorse role, and he was at least an RB1 in 7 of 9 games, 6 of 8 games before the week 9 bye. But looking post bye week, he's been a disaster for fantasy. Compared to what he was doing in the beginning, he's been borderline an RB2, maybe not even. Like in points per game purposes, he just hasn't been there. It's been very on and off, very inconsistent. The volume hasn't been there. And when you look at Dearness Johnson's snaps, they've gone way up. They've got like in the first half of the season, like he was like in like the 5 to 10% range, but lately he's been in the 25, 30, 35, nearly 40% snap range. He's been stealing opportunities, and that has killed Travis Etienne. That's the Travis Etienne I expected in the first half of the season. But if you had Travis Etienne in the first half of the season, props to you. You won a lot of games because of him. But I was half wrong there. But that one, that one was one of my boldest takes this year, and it really hurt me watching him go off. It really made me mad.
So our picks are actually very copacetic for number 2 because first of all, especially in a lot of the best ball drafts that I was doing, they were going basically back to back. They were right next to each other in ADP in a lot of drafts that I was doing. And it was the reverse. Where your guy ETN popped off in the beginning of the season and has kind of tapered off. Najee fucking Harris and this goddamn Steelers offense
so bad, dude. It's
As
so
a fan of the team, I've been just appalled at what I've seen from the preseason into the regular season because, like, in the
so bad.
preseason, they're running. It's so weird because it's like they're running the base offense, and you're like, it's the preseason, so that makes sense. And then all of a sudden, like, they're like, well, fuck all that shit that was working. I know it's a preseason; those are backup defenses, but fuck all that shit that was working for our young team. Let's go back to the shotgun style that we were running with old ass Ben Roethlisberger in his 18th fucking year of football. Like, there was a play, it's still on my TikTok, where they do it's out of shotgun. They hand it to Najee on the left with a pulling tight end who's supposed to be like the lead blocker.
Yep. I know exactly what you're
Hold
talking about.
on fucking 6 yards in the backfield, having to break tackles and then bust it off to the right. And people are like, why is Najee Harris suck? It's like, because this fucking offense sucks. It took us way too long to fire Matt Canada. And even when we did, we kept the stupid shotgun formations. And only now with Mason Rudolph have we been like actually kind of decent to watch. And Najee, the last couple weeks, of course, has been fantasy relevant after knocking me out of Scott Fishbowl. You fucking fucks. That was honestly, that one very much was like almost my number one, but number one was like so egregiously bad that it still had to be number one for me. Najee Harris was one of my slam dunks of the year. And if it wasn't him, my other slam dunk and number one.
Do you want to see me dunk?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Are you guys ready? I'm okay. No, don't worry.
Does that always happen?
I freaking love that video so much.
We gotta save the best for last. My number one, Darren Waller and Daniel Jones.
You were
in,
huh?
God, even before he got in,
Wow.
Daniel Jones was an abject disaster for football, for fantasy, for life in general. Holy fuck. This man sucked the air out of whatever hopes and dreams any Giants fans may have had going into the season. It was maybe one of the worst offensive performances that I can honestly remember. Darren Waller was irrelevant. He crept up. He was being drafted like right there with like, it was like after Kelsey and Andrews. People were literally like going after Darren Waller. He was creeping up as high as
he was.
5th round. It was nuts. The ADP, and I was there. I didn't get a lot of Darren Waller because he kept going in front of me, and thank fucking God that kept happening to me because I was like spared, by the mercy of the fantasy gods. But man, what a fucking catastrophe it has been for Daniel Jones and Darren Waller. The only cathartic release for me was that it led to one of my better segments. Hey, I'm on waivers over here. With my nice so
oh my God.
We'll end the show here. What was your number one, Hutch, on the year of 2023? Things that we got wrong.
Hey, real quick, I'll comment on Darren Waller. I mean, it honestly, like in the first half, it was bad. It wasn't as bad as you think, though. 4 of his first 7 games he played healthy. He had 5+ receptions. I mean, the volume was there. It just, this offense was just so bad, and he wasn't great. He was okay, though. It wasn't meeting expectations, but he was actually okay. It wasn't a complete catastrophe, but Darren Waller, if you were in on him, was definitely a disappointment. And then he got injured. It just no, it hasn't been there. So looking at my last one, I mean, my gosh, there's just so many things I could talk about here. Man, I don't know. There's a couple things I had because I wrote down extras just in case you'd steal any. I'm just deciding here between a couple. I had a hot take. Is it okay if I share out a hot take that I had and that just didn't work out?
Go for it.
So here's the thing. This hot take, I had a hot take that I thought legit happened. And I had it ranked that way. Like I was in on this hot take and people just destroyed me for it. We had seen flashes of this could potentially be true, but it didn't pan out. I had a hot take this year that I thought Zach Charbonnet would outscore Ken Walker in fantasy football. That was the take. I was like in on Zach Charbonnet. Ken Walker was a complete bust. for me in fantasy football. I was not in. I was all in on Zach Charbonnet. And while Zach Charbonnet has looked good on the field when he's gotten opportunities, and there are plenty of games where he's actually outscored Ken Walker and outsnapped Ken Walker this year. There are games where that has happened. It didn't happen overall in the season because Zach Charbonnet just didn't get involved enough. And then Ken Walker got hurt too. And it just made it really complicated. But overall, I was wrong on this take. And it really sucked because I was really adamant that this was going to happen. And it just did not happen. But I still think I was right in some aspects because Ken Walker was definitely a bust when you look at even when he was on the field. For the first few games, he was great, but then since then, it just hasn't been good. You haven't wanted to start Ken Walker in fantasy. And Zach Charbonnet, since he's gotten involved, has been a really solid piece in fantasy. He's been a good piece that you want to start. And another one I'll shout out as one last one, just an extra one, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I was really hoping he'd break out and have a fantastic rookie year, but he's been okay. It's not his fault. Get him the ball, Seattle. Get him the ball. He's better than every receiver on that team.
The JSN one, I see the talent. I was in on that. The problem was I also saw DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in front of him. And I was like, oh, those are two very legitimate, like potentially all-pro wide receivers that are definitely going to get their targets ahead of the rookie, no matter how good he is, unless one of them gets injured. Hey, that's it for our top 10, but we've got a couple quick minutes here. Let's get some honorable mentions since you said you had a couple more. I'll just quickly throw out Breece Hall and Javonte Williams. More on the Breece Hall side. Miracle of science that he's come back and had such a great season. Javonte Williams, miracle of science that he came back at all. Especially as
it was a miracle, man.
Like the fact that he came back early and to me has been like kind of a volume running back is fucking crazy considering his injury. So yeah, throw out a couple. You said you had a couple quick ones. Go for it.
I do. Yeah. I have a couple late drafted wide receivers that I completely missed on. Like I just did not draft these guys. It's not that I like hated them. I should have done more research and been more in. Adam Thielen was the first one. I mean, to me, he looked washed in Minnesota. When I watched him in the past year before he got sent to Carolina, I thought he was washed. I really didn't think he looked good, but I should have seen the opportunity that he had in this offense because there was just nobody. Somebody had to step up. And I thought Jonathan Mingo was okay. I didn't know if he was good. So as a result, I should have taken some shots on Adam Thielen. I should have done that more because he really showed out, especially in the beginning of the season. Since then, it kind of faded a little bit, but he's been at least relevant for fantasy. He's definitely been a good value that you've had in your fantasy football leagues. And then Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I just was not in on the Texans receiving core at all. I was just like, nope. Nico Collins I liked in the beginning of his career, but after 3 years, he just hadn't shown much. And I was just like, I'm good. Or actually 2 years. This is the third year. After a couple of years, I was just like, he hadn't showed anything. And I was just like, I don't know. I'm good. I still don't think he's as talented as some people think. I think C.J. Stroud has really made a nice impact on him. I think he's a good player, but not great. Tank Dell, though. I completely missed on. I just didn't think he was good enough. I just didn't think that he was big enough to be an NFL wide receiver. I like Devontae Smith, but Tank Dell was at a whole different level. I mean, the size difference between those two is actually pretty significant. I just didn't think Tank Dell would be able to get in on an NFL field and be good for fantasy, but he showed out in preseason and then he continued to ball out in the NFL until he got injured. This dude is a legit wide receiver. He'll be the wide receiver one for the Texans next year.
Thielen I drafted a ton of, but I'm with you on Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I missed completely on Tank Dell.
I missed on Stroud too. I liked Stroud. I thought he was good. I thought he was very 1A, 1B with Bryce Young. I thought he was right there, but I did not expect a good season from this Texans offense at all. And they completely proved me wrong.
Yeah, Stroud, I was a little more kind of sum of all parts, but no, Tank Dell, I'm with you. I totally missed on that.
Yeah,
I thought he was. I can't remember the name of the Broncos wide receiver that was also drafted. That was like a small burner, but there were a couple of those guys.
AJ Hamler.
There's a couple of those guys that went to draft, and they were kind of popular late picks, and I just kind of saw them all as like, yeah, these are all like little guys that like might pop for a week or two. I didn't see them being consistent. Tank Dell though was definitely prime among them. So that is officially it for us. That's most of the things we got wrong in 2023. I'm sure there were more out there, but hey, for today's purposes, that's where we're at. One more time for the people out there, Hutch, let us know where we can find you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. You all could follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. I create content for football guys with their social media. I create 4-4 football YouTube videos. and I write with Dynasty League Football. Also, me and Luke Sawhook have a podcast called Hooked on Fantasy. Check it out. We live stream on Wednesday nights at around 9 p.m. Eastern, sometimes 9:30, just depending on the schedules that work out for the both of us. And then it posts as a podcast on Thursdays. We are sometimes inconsistent schedule-wise. Luke is crazy busy. I'm crazy busy outside of fantasy football and in the fantasy football worlds. We're doing our best always, but we have fun with that show. So if you're interested in any of that content, please check it out. I'd appreciate you.
Hutch, thanks so much for coming on the show. And as always, thank you to all you wild and weird listeners out there. I will catch you guys all on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes